And welcome to the weekly Threat Intel meeting. I'm Josh Bacon from Volta Technologies. We've created this meeting to keep our customers and everyone else who might be interested updated on the biggest news from cybersecurity for the week. With me is Jeff Jarecki, our CISO.
Good morning, everybody. I am the CISO for Volta, and we are excited to start bringing you these weekly podcasts to let you know we kind of filter through and pick out the most important stories and talk about the risks around them. So welcome.
Also joining us is Tracy Whitlock, security engineer here at Volta.
Thank you, Josh. It's good to be here, and I'll be focusing on the Microsoft news.
Also joining us is Andrew Harrington.
Hello.
Chase Carlin, another security engineer.
How's it going? So I recently just got promoted to the cybersecurity team lead and proud to be leading these guys.
Yep, he's my big boss. No one say anything mean about him in the comments. Please don't. I'm begging you not to. Also with us is Michael Gay, another security engineer from Volta. And we're going to be walking you through the biggest stories of the week. Starting off, Microsoft Exchange servers as usual. I don't think a week has gone by since Microsoft launched Exchange that a vulnerability hasn't come out for these. Today, what we're dealing with is a dropper that people are putting on the Exchange servers that is pretty much infecting the entire environment. The idea is you put this thing called Session Manager, which is a backdoor that enables arbitrary file dropping, encryption of files if you're in a ransomware mindset, or even decrypting of credentials that happen to hit the Exchange server at any time. And Kaspersky found this, so take it with a grain of salt, but 24 out of the 24 out of the 34 organizations they noticed had this issue were still had the malware deployed on it. This is a long-running malware that takes advantage of being on a system for a long time and collecting a lot of credentials. The other thing we can see is that this was used by the Gelsemium APT group, which was something that they've been active since 2014, I believe. Active since 2014. Always these ransomware and APT groups are using 0-day to access any server that's online. If you have an Exchange server that is open to the internet, that is something that's going to be scanned and potentially backdoored against. So please make sure you are providing a lot of security on Exchange servers.
Did it mention how they're getting this on there?
So it didn't have a really good vector for this. I think, so this started after the proxy login attacks. So I'm thinking that the vector of this is a 0-day that is unpatched. And we'll be talking about that more later on in the podcast, about how unpatched vulnerabilities are kind of a big thing that's been going on in the last year in terms of what's leaving people open to these gaps. But it's been harder and harder to find vectors for these things. I mean, Felina, for instance, it's only recently that we've actually been able to find a sample of the payload that they're attempting to download onto these computers. So malicious actors are definitely getting a lot better with obfuscation of their payloads.
Gotcha.
Yep. So if you have an Exchange server, please make sure it's a well-updated Exchange server. That'll do you a lot of good in the future.
Your asset management and vulnerability management program should be on a regular cadence for proper patching and updates. If it's not, if you're falling behind, if you're struggling for one reason or another, this is a good opportunity to call Volta. We can help you with that. But whether it's with our help or without our help, you've got to make sure that you're keeping these critical systems that face the rest of the world patched as often as possible. And I know it's complicated for organizations at first if you aren't in a regular cadence and you don't have a solid vulnerability management program. But once you get that cadence going and you understand how to test and make sure that the latest patches aren't breaking your production requirements, it gets easier. So reach out if you need help in that arena. Otherwise, you are just waiting to have something like this happen to you.
Yeah, and we'll be talking about that a little bit more later on. Moving on, we have OpenC. Now, did anyone else like me get really into NFTs and crypto when it came out, or is that just me? So I signed up for probably a good 3 or 4 exchanges, which was the biggest mistake I've ever made because I get these daily. So as you can see right here, we have a pretty simple OpenC phishing message. Anyone who's involved in crypto or NFTs, you've had your email leaked. I 100% have, because I get these phishing emails every single day. As you can see here, it's a very, very simple phishing email. The idea is it's just a one-click claiming to be from OpenC team themselves. If you look at the email, it's clearly not an OpenC team email. This is not a very sophisticated attack. I see them every single day. Not a single one is very smart. The entire idea is it's trying to find users that see a money-related email and click it immediately out of panic, essentially. A lot of the times these emails will say something like, please reactivate your account or you're going to lose all of your money within a month, or please check on this thing in your account or we're going to ban you from OpenC. Anything that inspires that little bit of panic in a user to click an email and click the link immediately is the most effective phishing you can have, especially when you have a list of users that you know for a fact has a lot of money on the internet.
So this is, I have a little bit of a controversial thing to say about this. So a lot of businesses, and there's not really one that I've worked for that is not guilty of this in some way or another, they train their users by implementing these systems or platforms for whatever work it is that they do. It'll email them, click here to open up and see this ticket, this update in a ticket, or click here to update your profile. And we as companies are actually training our users to utilize business email as part of a process flow. And I'm just going to tell you now, from a security perspective, it's one of the worst things that you can do. Ideally, you really want to train your users. It's fine if you get the email from Salesforce or whatever platform telling you have a ticket or a thing you need to work on. That's fine. Don't click anything in it. Go to Salesforce, log in, you'll see the notification, and you can do your work there, or whatever platform it is you're working on. If you're training your users to click inside of emails, problems like this are always going to persist. So this is again, a good opportunity to talk about your security and awareness training, your phishing campaigns and training your users. But really one of the best things that you can do is to teach your users to completely and totally abstain from clicking anything in an email. And to Josh's point, the number one thing you can train them on is if you read in an email and you even feel one hair on the back of your neck stand up like you need to hurry up and do something, or you're in trouble, or something has gone wrong, don't click it. Don't click anything in the email. Train your users that way. It's just, that's how they get you. It's called pretexting. It's an art, and avoid it. Yeah,
Tracy and I run the phishing campaigns for a lot of customers that go to Volta. We love this. We just on a results mentality, we love it when a lot of customers are willing to just click a link automatically, because we're going to be able to come back to the customer and be like, hey, around 80% of your environment is very heavily phishing prone, because you've set up your users with this expectation that anything that comes to their email is so well filtered and so often related to work that it's safe to click on every single time. So we'll be talking also a little bit more about this later. Moving on, HackerOne employee caught selling vulnerability reports for money. So this is my current retirement plan. I do run vulnerability reports at Volta. And eventually, when I am tired of doing these vulnerability meetings, I will start selling assets on the dark web. But this guy got caught far before I did. Originally, I thought what this guy had done is take these vulnerability reports and sell them on the dark web, because the title is that he sells these reports for personal gains. But apparently what he was doing, which is even smarter than that, was going to the companies directly and claiming these bounties as his own. So yeah, if anyone is a little new to cybersecurity, you'll know about the messy industry that is bug bounties, and how it can be difficult to get your payment for the work that you do. This guy found a good way around it, which is just get someone else to do the work and then sell that work. But this will be leading into our big question of the day. Essentially, is there any amount of money, any amount of infrastructure that could have stopped a breach of security like this? Because at the end of the day, as much as we put into security and end user training, the biggest vulnerability and the biggest thing to exploit will always be the end user. Ransomware groups like Lapsus make their entire money, make their entire reputation off of doing nothing technical except paying off and bribing people that work within these industries. And when you are working with a large company like HackerOne, who has access to hundreds and hundreds of customer vulnerability reports, that is always going to be a very good honeypot to attack, essentially. Be very careful when you are doing vulnerability assessments that you're doing it with a company that pays a lot of attention to how that data is handled. It's similar to PCI DSS. It's similar to handling customer credit cards. This is valuable information that you need to have a handle on.
So I'm going to chime in here. So this circles back to proper vendor due diligence. So number one, if you are doing business with an organization that's doing vuln scanning or reporting or anything, you should be doing vendor due diligence. You should be asking them questions. There is entire third-party cybersecurity risk questionnaires that you can utilize. We can help you with that. But you need to understand how your vendors are treating your data and how they are inspecting their employees and making sure that they are not up for nefarious intent, right? And ultimately, you need to make sure that not only you, and I understand smaller organizations probably don't have this and you're not ready for it yet. That's okay. That's where people like us come in. But your organization really needs to have an insider threat program. You have to understand when you have people with a great amount of information that is very valuable. I hate to say it, but you have to watch them more closely. It goes well beyond privileged identity management or privileged account management. It's much more about insider threat monitoring and tracking to make sure that those with the greatest access to data and value are using it responsibly. So something you really have to take into account, because otherwise, before you know it, you're HackerOne and you're having to explain to your customer space, we're super sorry. We're totally going to make sure this doesn't happen again. But investor, your confidence has already been lowered at that point.
Yeah, Jeff, do you find any value in DLP for situations like this? I know
DLP?
Yeah, I know most of the time he's going to do it like a Edward Snowden and put the information in a Rubik's Cube and sneak it out that way. But
so DLP, I managed groups that did DLP engineering for years at a number of institutions. So I'm a big fan of DLP, and when it's done accurately and correctly, absolutely. What you will often find, though, in most DLP programs is that they get wary. The company gets wary, and they don't continue fine tuning the product, and so they kind of give up. And therefore they are getting an onslaught of alerts, creating a massive amount of alert fatigue, and therefore these things don't get caught. And first of all, it's even if you could catch it. Sometimes you have individuals that have exceptional amounts of access that are able to bypass those controls. They know how to, and there's lots of ways. I mean, I could tell you a dozen ways right now, but a matured data loss prevention platform could stop something like this. Perhaps. There's also, I mean, you're always going to hear the arguments from the architects who are like, well, no matter how good your DLP is, someone could just take pictures of it and OCR the data. And they're not wrong, but you want to make it that difficult.
Yeah,
you need to make it that difficult.
They're certainly not wrong, but especially in security, a lot of the times you want to have the locked door mentality of if someone is going around a neighborhood trying to break into homes, they're going to try each door and not try to break into the ones that are locked. They're going to go for the door that's unlocked, that's the easiest to get into, that has the quickest payoff, essentially. So deterrent-based security, while it isn't the strongest, oftentimes will be the first step in securing you. So keep in mind, it is a very valuable resource. So everyone, I believe, had a rough 2020 and 2021. So I'd like to take a step back, look at last year. What were some of the biggest attacks that happened last year? What were the most preventable situations? A lot of this information comes from this blog right here, threatpost.com. Which had a very good write-up of some of the most preventable attacks that could have happened last year. But just one quick quote from it: incidents caused by unpatched systems cost organizations 54% more than what was caused by employee error. So like we were talking about earlier with with Microsoft Exchange and OpenC. The difference between these two is one is a user-based action where the other is a technical-based action. What we're talking about is unpatched systems, things that are vulnerable to Log4j, for instance, or the Microsoft Exchange server vulnerabilities are causing severe more damage in the last year than end user training has in the past, or lack of end user training to be precise. We're seeing things like Log4j, like Proxy Shell, come in as a 0-day vulnerability, and then for whatever reason, remain unpatched and on an open server for months at a time.
That's heartbreaking.
I know.
The user, this is what gets me. And folks, for you listening, I know you already know, user training, there's always going to be the percentage of users that no matter how much you train them, they're still going to click the email. They're still going to do the wrong thing. And when we know that, and so we build controls around them and we enhance our controls around them. But it's an art, right? To be good at that. Patching your systems is a requirement. It's not an art, it's a requirement. You must be doing this. These things are absolutely preventable. Exactly. That's why it's called preventable attacks. These are preventable. The user ones, you can argue that a percentage of those aren't really preventable. I mean, if you do it the right way, they are preventable, but it kills me that we're in 22 here and we're still doing this.
That's what I'm saying is I know they're called preventable, but the idea is that they really are preventable if you have a good cybersecurity patching solution in place. And I mean, there's so many different solutions. I mean, you could have a WSUS server, manage engine. There are a lot of solutions that someone like Volta can come through and sell you to get you to that place where you are consistently patching your systems. But if you are a business that has decided that patching is not a cost you want to cover, then I would recommend you go ahead and save up a good, I think $50 million or something like that to go ahead and restart the business. That might be a good idea.
I mean, folks, he's not, I mean, he's joking, but he's not joking. Like this is a situation where it's the ounce of prevention, right? But it's not even really just about that. I understand no one here is promoting to you that, oh, we just patch and everything's magical. We understand patches break stuff. I get it. That's why we set up an appropriate change management situation, right? You need to be testing and promoting through the environment. But ultimately, you can get this into a cadence where it is not such a heavy lift to keep your systems patched and updated. And listen, I'll tell you right now, everyone here will tell you, we always base decisions on risk. It's always a risk-based approach, no matter what you do. So if you are looking at your current infrastructure and you're saying, man, they're right, I know I need to be doing a better job of patching, call us and let us help you. But if you don't, always start where the risk is the greatest, which is going to be your critical assets and your public or external facing systems is where you always begin. If you can only get to a portion of your systems, that's where you go first. That way you can mildly trust your other layered defense approach through your firewalls and other IPS or IDS devices to protect your internals. Your externals and critical systems, it's non-negotiable. You must keep them up to date.
And if they aren't up to date, and it's been a good 6 months since Log4j came out, I personally and most other MSPs and security consultants would recommend that you go ahead and label those servers as compromised, essentially. Yep. Go ahead and label them as something that has more than likely caused a gap in your security. Do triage, do whatever form of forensics you can on that server, and hopefully you have backups.
Check your logging, look for any malicious activity. And if you're going, well, Jeff, I don't have good logging, please call us. We need to help you. You need our help.
Yeah, this is one of those situations where when you notice you're behind on it, you notice that you're 1,000 feet behind, not a couple inches. I'd also like to bring this little statement to attention. Use of compromised credentials took place in nearly 23% of cybersecurity incidents. So I mentioned lapsus earlier, that mostly just bribes employees of AT&T or T-Mobile, but what we're talking about here is phishing emails, essentially. We're talking about end user training failing. And I'd like to go ahead and bring that to our discussion on the Volta team. Is end user training or system patching more effective against cybersecurity incidents?
That's a loaded question.
Now, it does depend on the year. I think in 1985, it would be without a doubt system patching. But in this year of 2022, I think it's very up in the air. We just saw Microsoft Exchange servers, Log4j, as a huge issue, but then we also see OpenC Phishing as a huge problem today.
I almost refuse to answer this, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to be very honest, because if you are not training here's the deal. This is the way I always explain it to my classes, and you all already know this, but for customers listening, listen, the whole idea of defense in depth is you're kind of putting moats around your castle. The challenge is all those moats, all those trained alligators, all the archers, they're all trained to shoot at unknown entities, right? As soon as your untrained user gives up creds, everyone becomes a known entity. So anyone's able to get through all of your IPS, IDS, your VPN, if you don't, especially if you don't have an MFA, please don't have VPN, not MFA. All of your defenses go away as soon as a user fails once. Whereas an unpatched system is a wide open vulnerability, and it's a problem, but it's the biggest problem when it's externally facing, because it's more accessible. But I guess if I hate to answer that question because it's both. It's abhorrent to say one is more than the other. But if I had to pick, I would say user account management for me would come first, because your patched systems matter, but it's the same thing it is everywhere. Hard and crunchy on the outside, soft and chewy on the inside, right? When we talk about security. So as soon as your users give up creds, it doesn't matter whether it's patched or not, you're owned.
Yeah, and especially if you have a VPN without MFA, it kind of doesn't even matter if your users give up creds or not.
Right, exactly.
Tracy, Andrew, either of you have something to say about this question?
I've seen some really sophisticated email attacks recently, like especially taking advantage of Felina, where they've replaced the body of the email with an Excel doc.
That's a really good point. That is a vulnerability that comes from both end user training and system patching. So when we see something like Felina that's multi-factored, that's when you realize the value in having a full stack security setup. You know, it's easy to say one is more important than the other, or in Jeff's case, it's impossible to say one is more important than the other. But the truth is they're both important. At the end of the day, if your business is compromised, it's going to be from one or the other. It's not going to be from a third thing, essentially. And if you have any questions about anything we've talked about today, or if any of the news stories we covered in this podcast have made you more aware of holes in your environment, Jeff?
Call us. We want to help. We really do. This is what we do. I would do this for free if I wasn't getting paid to do it.
I enjoy it. I enjoy it a lot.
Let us help you. Seriously. This is all we do. This is what we eat, sleep, and breathe. We would love to chat with you and help you find a way to secure your systems and get you some sleep at night, so you don't have to worry about not only delivering on your mission for your customers, but delivering on maintaining a workplace that can continue to pay your employees and support the communities that you live and work in. So
yes. And we like doing progress with customers. So if you're someone who's in a deep hole, call us. We'll see what we can do. I mean, the deeper the hole we can dig you out of, the more satisfied we are at the end of the day. All right. I will see everyone next week with more stories and more information. Please keep your eyes open and your head up.
Cheers, folks.
Have a good week, everyone.
Have a good one.